So thank you so much, all of you who've joined me today. I appreciate how busy you all are. So I'm going to make sure that this is going to be of some use. These are some of the insights that I've learned. I've been coaching for about 7 years now, and it feels like a really nice time to share with you all what I've learned. One of the greatest insights for me was the realization that it's your time that's scarce, not money. And then the minute you realize that your time is the most precious resource you will ever have in life, and that money actually is abundant and you can earn it, you can save it, you can invest it, you can substitute it for something else. But your time on this earth is sort of a diminishing asset. So use it or lose it asset. And that sort of realization, although it's so simple and so common sense, really changed so much of how I live my life and how I see time for myself and others. So what I'm going to share today is some of the things that might help you, because they've certainly helped me to think about the bigger picture, but also align it with what I really want to get out of my life and my business. So these are what I call the 4 Ps. And these are things that if you think about your foundation for your business, you will have certain pillars to any foundation, and these are the 4 Ps that I think make a good starting sort of conversation or thinking process on what your 4 pillars are. So the 4 Ps are plan, prepare, process, and personalize. And I want to go through each of them in a bit more detail. So when we talk about planning, first off, I want to take a step back and think that when you actually came into this business, or when you decided to become a coach, there must have been some sort of overarching reason you did that. And so some of the questions that you might ask yourself, they're all the sort of W questions, what, why, when, where, whom, etc. So let's talk about some of the important W questions. The first one is what. So what are you hoping to get out of this business? What it could be in terms of how it makes you feel about, a sense of fulfillment, or it could be in terms of money. How much are you hoping to get out of this business in terms of earnings? It could also be, what are you willing to put into this business, both in terms of your own energy, in terms of your own resources, in terms of, time. Those 2 questions are a key starting point in planning how this business is going to work for you. Then the other really important W question is why. And, there's people like Simon Sinek who say, start with the why. So the reason the why is so important is because in that why, you have the underlying reasons or your purpose for doing this. And in that, you have things like, what is your vision for this business? Why do you do it? What do you see happening for you and for the people you serve as a result of doing this? What are your goals? Because it's one thing to have a vision, but you have to make it tangible so that you know what it is you're aiming towards. And finally, what are your values? And something like coaching, because it's so personal, your personal values, your non-negotiable beliefs are going to be really key in how you approach this business. The other reason I think values and your why is so important, because we know that life sometimes has a way of testing us, and things are not always going to go the way you wanted to go. And those are times when it's really helpful to sit back and think, well, why did I go into this? I must have known that it wasn't always going to be smooth sailing. There were going to be times when I would question, why I'm even doing this. And that's when you remind yourself of your why. So those are 2 W's. There's others too. We won't, could be all day here if we talk about all of them. But then the next one is the how. So the how is, well, given what I know about me, given what I know about what I'm trying to achieve, why I'm doing it, who I'm going to be targeting, etc., how do I aim to do this? And with coaching and the kind of coaching that we do, there are the 3 C's that actually make up the how. So I'm going to begin with curiosity. So curiosity is really being interested in something without necessarily being intrusive. And this is really important for us because, we could go into a client call and it could be a really interesting person. And in my early days of coaching, I would create this space and I would get really interested. And before I knew it, I'd run out of time and I hadn't covered all the other stuff I needed to cover. So it's finding that balance of taking an interest, but remembering that you haven't got, all day, but also making the person you speak to feel like you are genuinely interested in them. And that is not just a purely transactional thing. The second thing about curiosity is to always go in with a beginner's mindset. And this is important because we know lots of things. We're going to go in, and in the early days, there might be a temptation to really impress the person you're speaking to. So they think, oh, wow, she knows so much, I've got to sign up with her. But actually, no, that's probably not the right approach, because what we really want to do is go in and meet the client where they are and not necessarily where we think they should be. And so actually going in almost with a blank sheet of paper, with obviously knowing a bit about them if they've done the Inquirer questionnaire, is to go in with a beginner's mindset and then just let them lead your understanding of what it is they need, where they are, and how you can help them. And the final thing about curiosity is really the active listening. And by active listening, I include all the non-verbal cues that sometimes make such an important part of communication. I mean, you will all be aware that 90% of all communication is non-verbal. This means, facial expressions, body language, the silence between the words people say, the tone of the voice, etc., etc. And I think when you actually become much more tuned in to that kind of active listening, it is amazing. You don't need them to say lots of things for you to understand what's really going on. And I think when that person feels that you really get them, something changes within them that creates the next thing, which is connection. So connection, of course, is about, creating rapport. It's about creating trust. It's about creating that sense of chemistry between two people, because, there is an exchange of energy when you go into a call, whether it's, whether it's sort of just an audio call, or even more when it's a video call, because they see you. And actually, when you've employed curiosity in the way we just described it, you have an opportunity to make that person feel seen, heard, and understood. And very often that person may have never had that experience, because people are busy, people are sort of battling with time constraints. No one's got the time to really pay attention to all these things that we as coaches are creating this safe, supportive space to do that. So that's connection. But beyond what we do with clients, there's a connection within ourselves. Like, what is it that I need for myself to make this a really good connection? So when you go into a meeting, if you're really tired, if you've had a really stressful meeting just before then and you didn't give yourself any time, maybe 2 minutes to quickly pop to the loo, come back, that's not great, because you didn't get a chance to check in with yourself to make sure you come back to sort of base, so you can go in with that beginner's mindset, with a clean sheet of paper, because you've gone in carrying the energy of the unhappiness or the frustration or whatever that negative energy was in the previous session into this next session. And your client will sense it, even if they don't know why they feel uneasy. So that's another lesson I learned. Sometimes I'm the problem, and that I have gone in with some baggage from something else. And if I simply connected with myself and cleaned that space, then I would have gone in with a better connection. And the third thing about connection I want to say is about boundaries. It's about creating boundaries for yourself. What is okay for you, but also respecting boundaries for the other person. And actually being curious, being actually very mindful that there is a two-way thing going on here, can help us create better boundaries. And then finally, it's the coaching piece, which we all know and love so much, which is why we're here. But I think sometimes, especially in my early coaching days, we all go into coaching because we want to help. You ask any coach and they're going to be like, I just want to help people. But one of the things I learned early on is that sometimes people have a problem, but they're not necessarily aware that they have a problem. Or if they're aware, they're not necessarily looking for help. So it makes so much sense for us to be mindful that just because we see somebody has a problem, that we think that, you know, if we solve this problem for you, your life will be so much better, doesn't mean that they are ready for us to help them. So to kind of feel that we have the responsibility to change the life, you know, this person's life, or to feel that we are responsible for making the world a better place, is a huge baggage to put on ourselves, and we are just not capable of doing that. So I feel that given that I have a limited amount of time in my life and in my day, I would much rather help somebody who actually has come with the intention of being helped, and who is open to the possibility of somebody coming in and helping them. So that's the first thing I want to say. But also, I think coaching really is about coaching the person, not their problem, because we're not consultants. We don't come in with a problem, with a strategy, and, you know, we go away and we assume that they're going to solve it for themselves. We are here to deal with the person. The person may come with a problem, and we will help them to unpick that problem and guide them. The next P is to prepare. And when, you know, when you've kind of had a plan and you've decided that this is what you're going to do, we need to think about, well, how are we going to go through those dynamics of the 3 C's in a way that is within our time frame, within the energy that we're willing to put into it. So there's a few things that help you create a structure. So the first is timekeeping. Now, this timekeeping is something I learned through experience. So and I think all new coaches do this, you know, we have so many things we want to cover in our starter session. You know, we want to be curious, we want to be attentive, we want to be listening, etc. 45 minutes seems like an impossibly short time in which to meet all of those objectives. And so it really, the thing that occurred to me was actually, it's not just my time that I need to be careful about, but it's the client's time, because they've come in expecting to get a session of 45 minutes. I'm actually being disrespectful to them if I keep them for 50, 55 minutes or an hour, because I have then not managed expectations very well, and I have taken too long to give them something that I could really be doing in 45 minutes. The second is record keeping. Now, I take copious notes in notebooks, and I get through a notebook a month. But then that notebook's helpful only to me. And even I find it difficult to read my own handwriting back, you know, later on. So I think finding a way to keep records so that if and when someday I'm not around and the client is still with us, that whoever takes on that client can actually get a sense of what that journey was for the client. So record keeping is really important. The second is, how are you updating yourself on what's going on in the world, what's going on within? I'll put my hands up. I am not always up to date with everything that's going on. I'm much more driven by what I need to know in the next few days. That drives my, you know, learning, because I'm not a factual learner. I'm a very experiential learner. So I like throwing myself into things and then learning pretty much on the job, or ideally learning about something I'm about to embark on. Because if I read a load of stuff today and I don't use it for a week, I'll forget. So it's a waste of my time. The next one is space management. And this is quite a big one, because I'm talking about workspace, because I realized the way my laptop and how I was using my mouse, it caused me to have repetitive strain injury. And this is not good. And because we work from home, we don't have a health and safety officer coming in checking to see if our workspace is designed to not cause back problems, wrist problems. So the onus is on us to make sure we do that. So that's the external space. But also things like lighting, you know, how are you showing up on the screen to your client? You know, how's the sound quality? What's your Wi-Fi network like? All this is, you know, space management. But the other space management is what I alluded to earlier. How much space are you giving yourself between meetings? How much space are you giving yourself between tasks? So you replenish yourself, you refresh, and you recharge your batteries. And the final one is time wastage, and how you can turn waste into reclamation. So this is, all of us face, you know, people who book a meeting and then cancel at the last minute, or reschedule at the last minute, or worse still, they just don't show up. Now, it's quite normal to feel really agitated and you know, feel like your time's been wasted and people have treated you with, you know, disregard, if not disrespect, and to feel really frustrated and angry about that. Now, I've come to realize that that is simply not productive for me to feel that way. So what I tend to do is within about 3 minutes, somebody's not shown up, I will email them and I'll send them, I'm really looking forward to meeting you. This is the link. Please join me. And if that person was delayed or, were struggling with their Zoom, they will immediately respond. And within a few minutes, I will know that they are intending to join, but something's happened, in which case that's fine. I will wait. If they haven't responded, or if they've sort of just not bothered, then I will give them up to 10 minutes and then I will cancel the call and then I will go on to do something else. Now, the good thing for us is that there's always something else that needs to be done. And actually, in a way, I feel really happy that, now I have 15 minutes that I did not have previously to complete these tasks that actually mean that I have more time to do something else. So reclaim your time. Don't waste it getting angry. Sometimes people have genuine reasons why they don't show up. Sometimes if you treat them, you give them the benefit of the doubt, they really appreciate it, and they will at some point even become clients because they know that you gave them a break. You didn't just assume that they were being rude and unprofessional. The next one, then, the next P is process, and this is about workflows. So now you've done all the preparation, you've created the space, you've become mindful of time, yours and other people's. Now you want to put it all into a lovely sort of flowy process. Now, we know that things don't always flow, because flow is all about, things that you can control, and there's always going to be other stuff that's going to come along and blindside us. So it's knowing that there's so much we can control, and how do we, make sure that those things are properly accounted for. So having some routines and rituals can really, really help. Now, I'm a very flowy person, but I realized, and actually when I stopped working, I used to work in the city. I worked for a wealth management firm, and my job, I was a fund manager, and I was head of UK equity. So I had lots and lots of things that every single day were changing. So no 2 days were the same. And I actually loved that about my job so much. There was so much intellectual freedom. I met some really, really interesting people. I got to choose, which direction my work went in. But in all of that, there was a structure, there was a routine. I left at a certain time of the day and I got back. There was no work from home in those days. This was back in 2014 that I left my job. And I thought, when I stopped doing that, I thought, my God, amazing freedom. I have, a whole day and I can choose exactly how I spend it, which was really great for about 6 months. And then suddenly I realized, oh my God, too much freedom is also not a great thing, because it means I have to decide every single day what I'm going to do with my day, how I'm going to structure it, because I was not accountable to anyone, only to myself. So I've come to appreciate routines and rituals, which then allow me to create a bit of a structure that works for me. So some of these things that you can think about is, what's your routine before and after meetings? How much time do you need to plan for your next meeting? Do you spend sort of 15 minutes going and looking at somebody's inquirer questionnaire, or, the conversations you had with them before? Do you do it the night before? Whatever works for you, create a ritual around that. The second is around emails. Again, we need to have some kind of routines and rituals about how we get in touch with people. I'm not a fan of calling people out of the blue. Most people also don't like, cold calls. I will do it only in an absolute emergency. So how do I then keep in touch with them? Have a feel for how you want to structure your emails. Same with research. How much time am I spending on researching what's going on within Octopus Money, what's going on in the world, what's going on in fields that interest my clients, so I can actually add value to them. Similarly with interactions, it's not just interacting with clients. We interact with each other, in the coach community. We interact through sort of physical meetups. We interact through CoachCon or through social media, through LinkedIn or whatever. These are all things that take up time. And let's create some kind of schedule, how often you want to go into those media. Same with training. Training, I think, as I've mentioned, my way of training is very much, I train for a reason, because I have to do it. So I'm not a very proactive trainer in the way, trainer as in trainee, I should say, as in I'm probably one of those people who will probably at some point get ticked off for not having done enough of the guru things, but I will get around to it at some point, and I will definitely do it if I think I need it. And lastly, with support, I think what I love about our community is, Ali's my head coach, and she is an amazing head coach. Shout out to Ali, because, I've gone through times, and Ali will attest to this, where I've had my sort of Kevin the teenager moments, like, why do I have to do this? I don't want to do this. I hate this and I hate that, because there are so many things about Octopus Money, KPIs that I didn't know about. And when I suddenly became aware that people were watching the stuff I was doing, it was like bit of a shock. Like, I'd got so used to being accountable to just me, and I could, do things in my own way. And the realization that actually, no, this is a proper business and this is not some hobby. Not that I ever treated it as a hobby, mind you, but that there are things that you are accountable for. It can be hard. And I know people sometimes leave because they think it's too hard and they can't do it. But I want to just say to you that if you're feeling that that is the case, that it's not at all. And that your head coaches, the other coaches, and I'm very happy to have a conversation with somebody if they're struggling a little bit, or they just want to know how I do things. I'm very, very happy to share what I do, and I will take time out to do that for you. And the final piece, personalize, which is one of the key P's for our, for our sort of service. And I always want people to know that we offer something which is actually quite unique. Now, the reason a lot of big companies don't offer personalization is because it is hard to do and it is very expensive. And if you're a big company, it means you have lots of clients, you probably have staff turnover. It's really, really hard to offer a personalized service at scale. So what we're trying to do is actually achieve almost the impossible, but it's not impossible, clearly, because we're doing it, is that we are trying to offer a service to people that generally will be offered almost as a DIY thing, or you'd have to pay a huge amount of money to get that personalized service. We are finding a way to bridge that gap. And how are we doing it? There's a reason we can do it quite well, and it doesn't have to cost an absolute fortune. And this is why, because we use, although we don't call it that, but we use the Lego approach. And what I mean by that is that when you think about a Lego set, you come with all these blocks, and you may come with a design that, if you're really dedicated, you'll sit and you'll create that with the blocks. But actually, the beauty of it is that you don't need somebody else's design. You can create your own design. You can customize it exactly to your needs. You can mix and match. You can change. If something goes wrong, you don't have to dismantle the whole thing. You just take out the bit that's not working. Say you built a little castle for your child, and she comes and says, I hate green. I didn't want green in there. You don't have to rebuild the whole castle. Just take the green block out, put a different color in. As this quote by Ted Roosevelt is one that's always stayed with me, that no one really cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So, we're going to learn so many things. We're going to know more things than our clients typically will, but it's not important for them to know that immediately. What they need to know is that we care about them as people. We care that they have a certain problem they want us to help them with. We want them to know what's possible for them. So it's not just always about solving a problem, it's about helping people see what's possible for them. And when we can establish that, then we can actually show them how much we know. And that's all about, that the iceberg principle, that you don't need people to see exactly everything you know. They just need to see the tip of the iceberg to get a sense what's beneath it. And then as time comes, we can tell them what they need to know. What I want to do is, rather than just make it Q&A, I would love for people to come in with their feedback and, what bits they resonate with, what bits they think that they do differently that maybe I can learn from. And yeah, we'll take it from